He was a computer geek at school who learned to code from reading magazines. Now, he is the CEO of Logicalis Australia. With a strong focus on sustainability, gender parity, and diversity and inclusion, Anthony Woodward is a leader on a mission, and he's also raised $65,000 to help prevent homelessness, taking part in the Vinnie's CEO Sleep Out for 13 years running. So is he a game changer? Let's find out. I'm Gemma Acton, welcome to Game Changers, in partnership with Logicalis, the architects of change. Well, Anthony, welcome to Game Changers. A lot of questions for you today. I think we're going to go right back to the very beginning to start there. Now, tech has been all the rage for the last decade or 2 decades, but you were a really early starter in this space. Tell us about what happened the day your dad brought home the Sinclair ZX81.
Yeah, hi Gemma. It really was the start of the journey for me, and as I remember it, and in fact there is a picture of me sitting at this handmade desk with a Sinclair ZX81. It had 1 kilobyte of memory and it was hooked up to a black and white TV. So that's kind of what taught me to program, and it was that experience of building programs and making them work and troubleshooting them that really got me into computers.
How old were you at this point?
I was 12.
Okay, and you were hooked from that point onwards.
Absolutely.
And tech's never really left your system since then?
No, I think I decided pretty much almost immediately that I wanted to do something in that space. And then a little bit later at high school, in year 9, a few of us got together and managed to get hold of the single Apple IIe computer of the school. And we kind of ditched science class to make a software program that was kind of science related, but it got us out of some of the more boring science topics as well.
Tell us about your time in Japan.
Well, after I finished high school, I studied Japanese at university for as a co-major while I was also studying computer science. And the last year of that degree was in the form of a traineeship, which our Japanese lecturer was lucky enough to be able to organise to send us to Japan for a year to experience Japanese corporate life as a trainee. And I was lucky enough to be admitted to Mitsubishi Electric's research organisation, which was at that point, the particular lab I was working in had about 7,000 employees, so not a small thing. And again, in the computer science field, I worked on some really interesting projects around human-computer interaction, which was very much leading at that point in time. But it also exposed me to Japanese corporate thinking and the way that Japanese companies were at that time run, and this was 1990.
The word unique is often overused, but I think when it comes to Japanese corporate culture, bureaucracy, leadership styles, it's very much unique, truly. What have you learnt from the time you spent at a Japanese corporate with regards to leadership?
One of the philosophies that I did pick up was that the leadership in Japan is through seniority, but that's not where the ideas are expected to come. Those are expected to come from those newer people who come into the organisation with a fresh mind, with fresh ideas, and then they bubble up. And that's really stayed with me through my career.
Yeah, I'm going to park that thought and come back to it when we talk about your current role leading Logicalis. But let's just talk in the middle about something else you'd have learned in Japan, and that would have been the innovation piece, because of course, particularly 1980s, 1990s Japan, that really was the beating heart of innovation. You went on to found 2 highly successful companies of your own. What did you learn about innovation that helped you in driving these startups to success?
I think the thing that a lot of people miss about the way innovation works in Japan is the curious and the inquisitive mind, really asking the question of why is it this way? Why do we do it this way? Is there another way? And really thinking quite outside the box. And that's really stayed with me. So in terms of starting those businesses, it's really been, what's the current status quo? How could we do that differently? And that's really what stayed with me through those startups that I've built over the years.
Any major lessons you can share with people? People always want to hear about entrepreneurial journeys.
Stick with it, I think, is probably the most important one. We've been talking to many people over the years about resilience, and the startup journey is a lonely one, and it often can be make you question every day, why do I keep bashing my head against this brick wall when it just doesn't seem like it's succeeding? But push through, because it will, and resilience is a key piece. You have to learn it. You're not really born with it. And you have to learn it through going through those difficult times and how do you get out the other side of them.
And as you say, you've developed this skill now, this muscle of being resilient, and then you chose to go from the entrepreneurial world back into a big corporate. A lot of people find that transition difficult, going from running their own show to being part of a big operation. How have you found the transition to Logicalis?
Well, it's a bit unique in a corporate sense from my perspective, because Logicalis is quite unlike a lot of global corporate organisations in that it hasn't got an organisation where there is a central strategy that's set that everybody must now follow blindly. Instead, it is quite an entrepreneurial organisation across the globe. It's been built through acquiring lots of businesses around the world, in the US and in EMEA and in Asia and everywhere else. So a lot of the leaders have an entrepreneurial spirit, and there's a fair bit of autonomy that's given to those regional leaders in how they execute on the global strategy. And that's what really attracted me to the role when it was put in front of me.
And how have you taken advantage or made the most of that opportunity to have your own autonomy?
Well, Logicalis Australia, among the Logicalis businesses around the world, has been going through a transition from being a more traditional value-added reseller where we're sort of very product-centric into a much more services-led business. And luckily in Australia there was quite a big services-led business in place, but it's really being able to make that standardised and map it out and bring it to the entire market and have us known in the market as a services-led organisation rather than necessarily a product reseller. So that's been the transformation that I've been trying to lead.
Within Logicalis, I know that the values are very firm, which is really interesting given that, as you mentioned, Logicalis has been built up of lots of smaller places that have come together. Sometimes you get competing values, it doesn't quite work out. But speaking to some of your clients this morning, I've heard that actually the values is one of the strengths when you put forward a proposal. What are those values that underpin how Logicalis does its work?
Well, the main thing is that really we are there for the customer, and that might sound flippant, but actually the joy that people at Logicalis get is in seeing how customers have been able to achieve what they want with our help. And that's what gets people up and coming every single day of the week. In Australia, we have a vision that we are the partner of choice for our customers, for our people, and for the planet. And that is really a reason to get out of bed every day. And the reason for that is if you look at some of the great projects that we've worked with our customers to deliver, they have changed communities, they've changed outcomes for people in everyday life. So it's not esoteric, it's really very practical.
Let me pick up on the planet point. Logicalis is known for being sustainable and having a focus on sustainability in its projects and in the solutions it provides. Why is that just so important to what you do?
Well, it's not just because Bob Balkowski, who is our global CEO, has made it a mission of his, but also because we really have a role to play for our customers in helping them become more sustainable. And rather than just building the underpinning technologies to allow that to happen, we also know that we also need to demonstrate sustainability in practice and principle as well. So we're very focused on, first of all, measuring. You can't change what you can't measure. And then we've made pledges about how we intend to be carbon neutral over our scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2025, which is not that far off, and net zero into the future as well.
Another big piece for you is diversity and inclusion. How central is that to the way that Logicalis operates?
Well, one of the problems of the IT industry is its representation across various diverse cultures and obviously gender. As an industry, we have about 20% representation. So from my perspective, that's leaving 30% of the population out of the picture. And how much are we missing out on that? Diversity of opinion and diversity of views and ways of working is how you innovate, is how you come up with new things that are truly out of the box. And that almost goes back to my experience in Japan of welcoming in and embracing different and diverse opinions and views that all go into a mixing pot and end up with something that's really, truly unique. So that's really what drives our diversity agenda from a representation perspective. And we know that we've got a lot of work to do at the very early stages of when girls and women are thinking about what their career will be, because they can't be what they can't see. So we've got to work on making that representation very clear to them and moving the needle on that.
Let's talk about another community that feels excluded who you also seek to help, and that's the homeless community, which tragically is growing in ranks in Australia as we move into the third year of the cost of living crisis. Now, for 13 years in a row, you've slept rough as part of the CEO Sleep Out with Vinnie's. Tell us about why you do that.
Well, I really find that homelessness and all of the things that lead to homelessness are much more factors of bad luck than they are through choice. So Vinnie's is a really important part of the glue that helps keep that community starting to get itself back onto its feet. And it's very much aimed at helping people reverse the trend that their luck is taking them in so that they can avoid homelessness in the first place.
And what do you learn from doing the actual sleep out?
Well, it's pretty tough on the ground at 6 degrees overnight and lying on the concrete in a sleeping bag. And I wonder, what would that be like if you had to do that every night? And not only that, worried about your safety and your possessions because you're not protected. So that really drives me to keep coming back. And until I see that homelessness is a thing of the past, I'll keep going back.
A dozen years and counting. Do you have any idea how much you've raised for Vinnie's over the years?
Something like $65,000 so far, of the $90-odd million that they've raised over their 20-year history. Next year is their 20th anniversary, so I think it's going to be a big one.
That's a very inspiring note to finish on. Anthony, thank you so much for your time today.
Cheers. Thanks, Gemma.